Sylvia Earle is taking the afternoon off. Dr. Sylvia Earle, marine botanist, one of the people we'll be meeting in this film. An afternoon off, what does she do? Well, among other things, she practices what she preaches, as a mother, as a scientist.
As a parent, trying to guide my own children about what direction they might reasonably take at this point in time, I say that they should be whatever it is that they feel best about, whether it's in art or whether it's in in science, to have a special something that is yours, that you've developed because you care about it. And I can't tell anybody what that is. Certainly can't tell my own children what that should be. They've got to feel that for themselves. Once they've got that in their hand, that's the passport to infinity.
Those are nice thoughts. But just for the sake of argument, suppose a young woman has that something in her hands, and a man comes along and says, sorry, science is man's work. What then?
If a high school girl or a young woman meets such a male chauvinist pig, I would say you put up a good argument, and if you can't change his mind, well, just kind of cross him off your list.
I think it's a great shame to have anyone say, oh, girls don't do that kind of thing, and you shouldn't try to do that. Although sometimes that kind of an attitude can make a girl so angry that she will then go on and become a biochemist or whatever she wanted to be.
I think women have a lot to offer in science. I think it's a shame that we've not been involved in the sciences earlier.
Science is not for any one single group of people. Science is for everybody.
I don't see any reason why other women can't come into this field and be a part of it. I'd say it's worth it.
I would say to girls who are wondering whether to go into science or not, I would say, well, it's the most fascinating thing you can do.
These are all working scientists, some just starting, others somewhere in the middle. Then there's Margaret Burbidge, one of the top astronomers in the world. Since she's a woman astronomer, she's something of a rare breed. There are a few around, but not enough for her.
There is a growing number of women going into astronomy, but there are only about, something less than 10% if you take a count across the whole profession, and I think it ought to be more than that, because after all, as the Chinese say, women hold up half the sky.
Now there's a thought. Women in science holding up half their profession. There's a long way to go for that, but the outlook is not all that bad, and really, that's what this film is about. Dr. Burbidge makes her living as director of the Center for Astrophysics and Space Sciences at the University of California at San Diego. Today, though, well, actually tonight, she's observing from the Kitt Peak National Observatory in Arizona. It wasn't always this easy. She remembers the time when women weren't even allowed in some observatories. After all, they were, well, women. Things have changed.
What corrector do we have in?
UBK7.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, good.
She's using the 4-meter telescope, one of the biggest. In some ways, astronomy seems like a strange profession. The working conditions, the odd hours, all those complex machines, and the complex math. Well, what is it exactly? Or what is it they really do? If you want to fire up her imagination, well, then just ask her what this is all about.
In one way, you can say an astronomer's looking for mankind's place in the universe. Where did we come from? Why are we here? How did life start on the solar system? And how did the solar system itself start? And what used to fascinate me ever since I was a child was the vastness of it all. As soon as I began to comprehend the big numbers, the huge distances, the difficulty of measuring distances of stars because they're just so far away from you, and the fact that we're looking back in time when we look out into the far reaches of the universe.
Now, if you want to fire up her independence, her sense of worth, then ask another question. Suppose, Dr. Burbidge, someone said to you, sorry, science is man's work. What would you say to that?
I'd say you were talking rubbish. Women have absolutely a place in science, and they do just as good science and the same sort of science, and they do their own particular individual research programs just as well as men do. I think the discouragement of women going into science starts very early on.
It starts in the home with attitudes, and it keeps on going. After the home, there's the school, junior high, senior high. These are the critical stages. Discouragement or encouragement, blind alleys or lots of options. Teachers, counselors, parents, all of them take part in this process. Students have lots of questions at this point, and if they aren't forthcoming, they need to be encouraged and answered. Rubbing elbows with encouragement does make the difference.
I was wondering what I should look for in college and what classes I should be taking now.
Take Carol Breed, for example. The encouragement came a little later.
I took a course in geology as a sophomore at Smith, and I had a marvelous professor. And he was a very clever man. He took us out of the classroom, and he walked us up Mount Tom in the Connecticut Valley, and he told us wonderful stories about the lava flows and the river and the erosion, all the wonderful things that had happened. And he told us the story simply by picking up the rocks and essentially reading the story from the rocks. I was fascinated, and from that moment on, I knew that that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to become a geologist.
Now she studies the deserts of the world, working for the U.S. Geological Survey. Her travels have taken her to Australia, to North Africa, to some places people have never, ever been before.
Oh boy, this is a good one.
Certainly is. It reminds me, doesn't it remind you of what we saw in Central Australia?
Mostly, though, she spends a lot of time in the desert close to where she lives, Flagstaff, Arizona.
Now look at this, look at these fingers.
And she does what all good geologists do. She looks for patterns, for connections.
The ability to see relationships, I think, is crucial to success, at least in my field. You have to be a careful observer, and you have to have a good memory, and you have to be able to relate things that you see in one area to things that you see somewhere else, and to relate all of that to earlier work that's been done on the same subject. They look very much like these broad valleys.
Yeah. The question is, did it ever rain on Mars?
Well,
Dr. Breed is interested in planetary geology, studying Mars and analog deserts on Earth. For instance, how does a desert on Mars relate to one in Arizona or Egypt? How does it all fit together?
and then this whole body
Not a bad
grows.
idea.
And as his body grows, the whole body...
There aren't any quick answers. But then geologists are trained to be patient people.
Uniform street.
As a uniform body of sand. Now, why it's why you have one here and here, I don't know, unless the whole business has migrated as a unit.
Carol Breed is a mother of 5, a grandmother. She got into her work a little late, after starting her family.
And I had my first baby 1 week after I got my master's degree. So I stopped at that point, and I essentially dropped out for 7 years. But the smartest thing I ever did was to get my degree before I had that first baby, because I was well on my way then to picking up the threads 7 years later, and that's what I did.
Her husband's a geologist, too. Somehow she's found time for other things, like being elected to the Flagstaff School Board. So when she gives advice to kids, including her daughter Amy, she speaks from experience.
They should strive to take the very most difficult things that are offered and to test their minds, and they should aim high.
I think I'd like to be an ethologist. That's a person who studies animal behavior.
I think one of the reasons I'm taking math is probably because it's fun. It's a challenge, and well, I like it, and also my parents like me to take it.
I think women, if they get the proper training, they're just as capable as anybody else.
Well, what about you? What do you think about all this?
Well, women in science seems all right with me. I don't know.
There's only 2 girls in my AP Science class out of a class of 11. And possibly two of the best students in that class happen to be the two girls in our class.
Most people think of science as a men's field, and I think this is because it involves a lot of mental work or using one's intellect, and most people even today think that women should be satisfied with baking a nice cake or having a beautiful house, beautiful children. I guess my case shows that you can really have your cake and eat it too.
Margaret Ho, the one with advice on how to handle male chauvinists, she works as a science writer and editor. A change of pace from when she used to work as a chemist, but her lab experience comes in handy. She knows what questions to ask. Dr. Ho has a good job. Good for her because she's worked out something special.
My job at the Eastman Kodak Company is not a full-time job. I work only half-time, and this is a beautiful arrangement for me because I have a young son at home, and I would like to spend some time with him while he's growing up. But I also have the satisfaction of accomplishing something, of having a career, and I'm also keeping a foot in the door, so to speak, to the outside world, because when my son does grow up and I'm left with all these empty hours, I think my experience working half-time might enable me with some additional education to actually go back in the laboratory. This is a possibility so that I have choices ahead of me too.
Choices and options. That's what this is about.
The first section of the chapter dealt with proportions and defined proportionality. The second
Those options are tied to math, and that's because math is tied to science. Without math, there is no career in science, period. End of debate.
Similar triangles, we have to start talking about
There is a debate going on about why girls as a group don't perform as well in math as boys. They're equal until about junior high, and then the girls start sliding. Teachers know this to be a fact, and the better ones are wrestling with the causes.
I wonder if one of the problems might be that we ourselves are subtly turning some of these girls off.
Right.
Let me give a for instance. Suppose a more aggressive boy gives his rendition of a proof in geometry, let's say. Of course, proofs can be different and still be right. Then you ask for someone else's idea, and a girl gives an idea, and you say, yes, that's fine, and go right on. Mm-hmm. It can happen. Yeah. You don't make a thing of it. Her proof is just as good as the boys. They're both valid. They both prove the point that's necessary.
But you didn't praise her in the same
way.
I think
some subtle messages, some critical signals. Then there's something else, male or female.
Well, you know, maybe students have a certain amount of anxiety about math.
I can certainly agree with that, because when I was in high school, I had the classic case. Math just frightened me to death. I never gave it a chance. I didn't give it a chance because I thought that I couldn't do it. And I don't think I even heard what the teacher said.
Your hands sweat. Yeah, and the rubber knees and, you know, a whole lot of other things.
There's a name for those other things. It's called math anxiety. At Spelman College in Atlanta, a psychologist works with anxious students, helping them understand what it is and what they can do about it.
Math-related major.
It would be much better if these students had received an adequate background in math and science while they were in high school.
The fact is they didn't. So people like Dr. Etta Falconer have to deal with it. She heads the Division of Natural Sciences at Spelman and has built on the school's success in math and moved women into the sciences.
We looked at the situation in the early 70s and realized that the young women who knew that they had to go to work were not majoring in the right subjects. We made a big push to get them into the sciences. Women have a lot to contribute in science, and we feel that the young, talented women that we have in this college are able to go into science. They are capable academically, and if we provide the support and the motivation for these students, they will be very successful.
Y = 2t² + 1.
Up until the early 70s, there was hardly any science at Spelman. Now, a third of the students are in science or engineering. And they're going out into the job market, and they're competing, and they're winning. Exhibit A is Diane Powell Murray. She works for TRW in California. She was a math major at Spelman and understands why it's so important.
I think one of the reasons that people major in math and perhaps decide to go to law school or medical school or go into journalism or whatever is that that particular discipline trains you to be very analytical, and it trains you to be very precise in your thinking. And with that type of training, you have a better chance of being successful in anything else.
Priority, class 2,
okay.
and so on.
Diane Murray is married to a psychologist, and they have a small child. She works full-time, and she can do this because, like other working couples, the Murrays have worked out an arrangement. It's called sharing. Gareth Murray talks about what all this means to him and to them.
I think that for many of the men that I know, when you speak of a woman that's career-minded, they immediately feel as though they will be neglected as far as certain responsibilities are concerned. I have no problems with Diane and her career because we share responsibilities around the house. She's a much better cook, so she cooks, but I do the dishes and share in other kinds of things, so it works out quite well.
Okay, now, let's broaden our view of the sciences. Consider the behavioral sciences, and then consider Dr. Elizabeth Loftus. She teaches at the University of Washington in Seattle.
And so, for the past little while, we've been talking about the relationship between memory and stress. And just to
the topic is how memory functions under conditions of stress. Now, watch this, and test your memory.
And what is indicated by this law is that under very high levels of stress or fear, or very, very low levels of stress or fear, the memory performance is going to be reduced, is going to be depressed. And that is known.
Now you can come in.
Okay, what's going on here? What just happened?
He took my purse.
Well, don't anybody go after him. It could be dangerous. What did he look like? I didn't. Now, don't be upset. Let's all calm down. What did he look like?
He had brown hair. He was about 5'8". I didn't really get a good look at him.
Yeah, I just short and brown hair. I saw a plaid shirt and I saw a beard. That's really all I saw. What about some of the rest of you? You were sitting right next to her. What did you see?
Well, yeah, he had brown curly hair, about medium height, and he had a beard. That's about all I saw. He ran by too quick.
He didn't have a beard. She planted the idea.
I'm doing something really very ordinary, just walking down a city street, passing stores, passing cars, lots of people. In fact, that car I just passed, I already can't remember what kind of car it was. I know it was a car, but I'm not really paying that much attention. There's a bank over here. What would happen if somebody all of a sudden ran out of this bank with a gun, ran across the street, maybe dropped a bag of money? Would I be able to recognize that person again? Probably not. And what our research is showing is that those kinds of memories are very, very difficult for people. It's hard in a stressful situation like that. It happens all of a sudden to remember important details such as those.
Elizabeth Loftus not only teaches, she writes books and articles and appears on television all around the country.
Well, we have a murder case. Our client's charged with a homicide.
She also consults. Lots of times she appears as a witness herself on the limitations of eyewitness testimony. She makes her case with statistics, with probabilities. In other words, with math.
Might have influenced or distorted the witness's perceptions.
When were these shown? How much after the murder?
2 months
later.
after the incident happened.
That's a fairly long period of time. There's a lot of decay that occurs in memory over a 2-month period of time.
The original description she gave...
2 months is a long time. But what about 95 seconds? It's been that long since we left the classroom and the purse snatching.
Okay, now I'm going to let you in on something that you may have suspected already. We staged this for the purpose of showing you what kinds of things happen when people see a very fast-moving event like this. Well, now what I want to do is stage a lineup, and this is very similar to what would happen if this had been a real crime and there were real witnesses to the crime. So could I ask the four of you to just line up right here, and I'm going to ask you if you recognize the person who stole that purse, okay? Who do you recognize anyone?
It's him on the recognize the guy on the right.
Guy on the right. Why'd you pick him?
The short dark hair and a beard.
Short dark hair and a beard. Anybody else? How about the rest of you? Any others? All right, you think you...
I think it's the one second to the right. He's somewhat tall, has a beard, and also the blue attire.
The important thing about eyewitness testimony, especially in this kind of a situation, is that we had some very certain responses. We had some identifications in this situation, and yet the person who committed this theft, the person who stole that purse, was not in the lineup.
Next time you witness something, remember to remember. It's one thing to travel the oceans of the world to collect specimens, but then they have to be identified, classified, and studied. And that's another part of the work of Sylvia Earle, the woman on the beach at the beginning of this film. She works at the California Academy of Sciences in San Francisco, and she has vivid memories of what started her on this path.
Like most children, I had a healthy curiosity. Now, that's a characteristic of scientists, I think. It's a curiosity that extends on into your full life. But unlike many children, I had remarkable parents who did not discourage that curiosity. I had what may be a mother of all mothers who went out of her way to show me how incredible the creatures are who share the planet with us.
90 feet of water.
That's her daughter Elizabeth, one of her 3 children.
Except for this flowering plant, the halophila.
She'd do things that some of my friends might think mad. For example, she'd bring us a frog, my brothers and me, and just show us their beautiful golden eyes. And through her own gentle actions, show us that that was how we could have a response from wild creatures that would yield gentleness in return.
A small sample.
Yeah, I think so.
Like mother, like daughter.
It's Valonia.
Yeah,
It's collapsed there.
Poke your nose into someone's office, just sort of look around. You'll always learn something about the person who works there. For Sylvia Earle, a trophy for her work underwater. That, along with trinkets and souvenirs and reminders of her travels and her interests and her work. Like the others we've met, she never settled for the traditional or the usual or the humdrum. Instead, she put in the long hours of study and worked around the occasional male chauvinist and kept reaching. And the point of all this is that the young women coming along these days will be working, probably for most of their lives. So why shouldn't they reach out and stretch? The neat thing about science is that a lot of it takes place in the mind, so it goes wherever the mind goes, a sort of portable skill. It does mean hard study. It can also mean an interesting career, an exciting career. All that, and still, something else.
Sometimes, while diving at night, especially in warm, clear, tropical seas, you encounter a lot of bioluminescence, living sparks of light that cover your arms as you sweep through the sea. You feel a little bit as if you're flying through space. Sometimes also in the deep sea, you encounter organisms that flash with their own blue light. It's just beautiful. You see little fish with lights down their side, or sometimes coral that bursts into blue fire when you touch it. And somehow this blue fire has come to be symbolic in my own mind of that aliveness that I think is present in all human beings to some degree or another. And this, in my mind, I call the blue fire that certain individuals have. I suppose the ultimate extension of the blue fire that I speak of can be translated in terms of creativity. It starts with curiosity, but it is ultimately expressed in terms of finding out new things, coming up with something that is discovered for the first time in your own mind.
There's another good thought. This sense of discovery, it's probably the one big thing shared by the people we've met in this film. Margaret Burbage, looking up into the heavens, and Carol Breed, looking down into the earth and reading the rocks. Margaret Ho, understanding the basic elements of chemistry, of life itself. And Etta Falconer, understanding people, their needs, and their goals. There's Diane Powell Murray, knowing her numbers and how they can work. And Elizabeth Loftus, probing areas of the mind. Independent women, distinct personalities, yet somehow part of a pattern, somehow very much alike. Sylvia Earle has the last word.
Sometimes in a conceptual sense, you've assembled a group of isolated facts, and then suddenly a pattern comes to be, and you see something for the first time. In a sense, this is discovering. This is a part of the creative mystique. This is the blue fire.